23, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Beaton.
Here.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Here.
Mayor Sullivan.
Here.
Councilmember Pratt.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski.
Here.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Here.
City Manager.
Here.
City Attorney.
Here.
DPW Director.
Here.
Planning and Zoning Administrator. Here. Police Chief.
Here.
Fire Chief.
Here.
City Engineer.
Here.
Roll call complete.
Thank you. Public hearings, we have none. Citizens comment on agenda-related items.
Good evening, council members. Mark Miller, 400 River Street, Manistee, representing both the Downtown Development Authority and the Manistee Area Chamber of Commerce tonight. We would like to speak in favor of the redevelopment liquor license for the Outsider Restaurant. We have worked with them for many months on getting all the requirements, and they have met the requirements for the amount of money invested in the property, which is $75,000, and also have gone out and talked to or contacted other license holders to try to find a way to work through and find an available license. There are other requirements as well about the investment in the district, which the city, the downtown development commercial district has met. And so we would ask for your support of this item. It will be a positive thing for the business, making it more sustainable, bringing in more revenue, also help with the viability of our downtown by offering yet another a place to drink and enjoy food. So we ask for your support and thank you very much.
Thank you. I can't see. Consent agenda. All items marked with an asterisk are on the consent agenda and considered by the city manager to be routine matters. Prior to approval, any member of council may have an item removed and taken up during the regular portion of the meeting. Items include approval of minutes, cash balances, revenue expensive, review of actions taken by the City Planning Commission, Historic District Commission, and Zoning Board of Appeals, consideration of the 34th Annual Victorian Sleigh Bell Parade and Old Christmas Weekend, consideration of the Manistee Lions Club White Cane Days. At this time, council could take action to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Consideration of zoning ordinance Z23-04, zoning ordinance Z23-04 would amend Articles 2 and 5 of the zoning ordinance, adding corner lot, double frontage lot, and established front yard to definitions in Article 2. In Article 5, it would allow for accessory buildings and storage sheds to exist in the front yard of a double frontage lot, if not located in the established front yard. At the August 15th, 2023 City Council meeting, Z23-04 was presented and council requested that the reference to driveway within the definition of established front yard be removed from the proposed language. This modification has been made, as well as modifying all the proposed diagram to remove the driveway depicted. As an ordinance, two separate readings are required. If this ordinance is introduced at this time, it could adopt at the next regular meeting. At this time, council could take action to introduce zoning ordinance Z23-04. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt.
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Consideration of a redevelopment liquor license for the Outsider Restaurant located at 457 River Street. The Manistee Downtown Development Authority is requesting City Council consider approval of a redevelopment liquor license for a restaurant in the downtown commercial district. The business meets the qualifications of investment in the building, attempts, and acquiring a regular license and the district's overall investment. At this time, council could take action to approve the resolution supporting the request from the DDA for a redevelopment liquor license for the Outsider Restaurant. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yes. I have nothing to say about the applicants in any kind of a negative way whatsoever. But I do question this process, and I want to tell you why. When we're given paperwork included in our agenda packets, and we see that part of the backup information, for example, is all the letters that were sent out to license holders in the county and in the city, if there were a couple in the city. So when I see those and I see no amount for your offer, I don't know how much were the offers to any of these license holders. And to be perfectly honest, I know that it's a scarcity, and I know it's a hot commodity, and I got a bad feeling that it's probably at least minimally $60,000 for a license. So that being said, I just wonder, I'm curious what those offers were. Were they probably, I'm guessing they were not market value because nobody accepted any of your offers, even though it was blank on your letters. So that bothers me. I just want you to know that that is a part of the process that bothers me. I also do not know how many DDA redevelopment licenses there are to pass out. So I am concerned about the number of liquor establishments we're opening up. But I do want to tell you on a positive note, I went out there with my husband to have lunch, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And I do want to say that for the outsiders, what I wish I could bottle was the essence of what I felt that day. Because there were families there were children playing. It was really just a wonderful experience. I'd rather have a bottle of that and invest in that than a bottle of Jameson. So that's my feeling on this. So I do feel like the entire council is a bit blindsided in these areas because we don't know the answers. And so I'm reluctant. I don't like doing this, but I'm reluctant to want to support this in my vote because those answers have not been provided. So thank you.
I have some of the same concerns that Councilmember Beaton brought up in regards to, I guess, the transparency between like what this process is. And maybe other council members knew that, but I did not. So I guess maybe Mr. Miller can answer that. Like, how much does a redevelopment liquor license cost through the DDA versus if you're trying to purchase one on the market?
So I can answer a couple of your questions.
Okay.
We did not, I'm Lisa Faber. Okay. John and I own The Outsider together. So we did not put an offer letter out. That was not a requirement, but we did ask if anybody would be willing to sell us one. So that's what our letter was. We were requesting if anybody had, would like to sell us their liquor license. And then in that letter, I asked for how much they would want to get for the liquor license. And we got no responses except for one, and he wanted to keep his liquor licenses for businesses that he's invested into in the community.
No, but your letters differ from, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. I shouldn't be doing that. But the letters that were attached to our documentation on July 18th, had where it said, want to make you an offer for, and then it was blacked out underneath. So the same space is there on the new letters that we got, but they're from the same people, but there's no black spot and there's no amount.
I wonder if, I have a copy of all the letters right here, and I guess I don't understand where that would be. We never made an actual offer.
Right.
Oh, that's
So if you wanted to buy something from somebody, wouldn't you have made an offer with a dollar amount?
The letters that we were required to submit were just if they would be willing to sell it, and then we would negotiate after that if there was somebody.
That was very unclear, so just so you know.
Okay, I'm sorry. We got this advice from our lawyer, and I just followed their advice on how to do that. This is new to me, too. And I think this is a new type of liquor license, so to answer another part of your question, I think that I don't know how many there are, but I think it's always up to City Council to approve them. You can't get one without City Council's approval.
Here comes Mark Miller, maybe he can answer that.
So, under the, I'll try to address the cost first. A redevelopment liquor license is set up so that someone can invest in a building in a downtown development district or area that's set up by the city council. That requires that they invest $75,000 or more in the building. That's been done. Another piece of that is that when they apply for the license with the Liquor Control Commission, they will also have a fee. I believe that's $25,000. 20? So you're getting up into the, $90 or so $1,000 of commitment for the license. In terms of the licenses that have been handed out in previous city councils and liquor control commissions, it's my understanding that the Vogue is one, and I believe that the Fillmore/Golden Stag is the second. I'm not sure if there's any others, Bill, if you can.
Those were the two examples that we sent over for this. And the other distinction too, I believe this liquor license for redevelopment is tied to the building, where some of the other ones may be more expensive because they could buy it and then take it somewhere else. So this really is something to augment or help the downtown for a redeveloping area.
I do understand that. I know I think they believe quarterly reports that you have to make to the Liquor Commission. It's I think they're quarterly. Maybe they're just twice a year, but you do have to identify how much money is liquor sales and how much money is food for this particular license. Correct? Okay. I just felt very blindsided by the paperwork and not having any guidance from, and I'm kind of addressing the management here, but kind of addressing, hey, we need your opinion on things when we vote on things, and it would have been helpful. I know you were on maternity leave, so I can't knock it too much, but
And it did seem.
we need to know how many licenses are available. We need to be thoughtful about when we grant these. And I have no idea what your feelings were on this. I think it just was put on there, and it was put on there in July too, and we,
So, and I guess to address that, I serve on the DDA board. I voted in favor of it. The recommendation was from the DDA. I put it on the agenda as a recommendation, but I could provide additional backup in the future if you'd like. There is the actual questionnaire on here showing that they meet the qualifications. I don't see a reason to oppose it if they meet the qualifications. There don't appear to be stipulations on how many a downtown can have, and I think given the amount of investment that they put into the building, I don't see a reason to oppose it. In terms of the backup, showing that they sent letters to people with a license and escrow, I think that shows an attempt. Whether or not they're reasonable with how much, or if they want to sell it, I don't know that either. But from the information I have, I don't see a reason to oppose it, and I'd recommend council approve it.
Well, don't you think we're going to get other requests for?
And I think if someone puts in $75,000 into a building, I think it's something that should be considered by the DDA and the council.
Will this go with I know that we're over licenses, right, in general?
So this, to my understanding, does not count with that Class C that we are over on, that people put into escrow. I'll let George talk
No,
about that.
that's correct. We're way over the quota for the city of Manistee for Class C licenses. Class C are the standard bar license that you have the ability to serve alcohol in the bar. There's no, that I'm aware of, restriction on the number of redevelopment licenses that are available to your community. Obviously, the purpose of that is to help redeveloping a downtown area. And so if someone wants a redevelopment license and is willing to put in a restaurant, I think that that's a positive thing typically that the Liquor Control Commission would support.
You can only qualify that for the DDA district, right?
Yeah, this particular one is the DDA district, yes.
So I have one question. You said it was tied to the building, so if they were to sell that building, would that redevelopment license transfer to the new owner, or would they have to reapply?
It's only transferable to another business that operates in that location.
Right, but if another restaurant bought it or somebody bought it and took over the business, they wouldn't have to like reapply for a liquor license. or a
Correct, that
transfer.
license, well, they go through the transfer process that you have to go through.
But there's a process, they wouldn't start all over from scratch.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else? Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt.
No.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
No.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Consideration of the Local Revenue Sharing Board grant applications. The Local Revenue Sharing Board, LRSB, distributes 2% money from the Little River Casino. The deadline for 2023 Cycle 2 applications is Friday, September 8th, 2023 at 5 p.m. City staff has prepared 4 grant applications for submission to Local Revenue Sharing Board. This agenda item will include 4 separate motions, one for each grant application. At this time, council could take action to authorize the submission of a grant application to the Local Revenue Sharing Board for the Police Department in the amount of $4,215.93 for the water rescue equipment. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
Any discussion?
Can you tell us like what we would ideally get if we got this grant?
So it's really 2 programs. The first part is life jackets for our police officers and throw ropes in their cars, so if we have to rescue someone, which unfortunately oftentimes we're asked to do. The second is a life ring program for the city for 3 of our peers. Other communities, Frankfort, Muskegon, Grand Haven, all have life rings on their pier, and so it would be to sustain a program for life rings. We've worked with the DPW on this program as far as funding it, and I think it's a great opportunity to be able to fund this with grant funds versus tax funds. So we have asked for enough initially to deploy about 8 life rings on our 3 piers and then to have extra to replace those.
How long do they last?
They do not expire. These ones are, for lack of a better term, plastic. So as long as they're in good shape, not cracked, same thing with the life jackets. As long as you inspect them and there's no damage to them, so.
Remember last time you put things on the piers and that, a lot of them got stolen.
Yeah. I'm asking the ugliest ones, to be honest with you. They're boring, they're reflective.
And you can guarantee better than last time.
What's that?
Is there any way to better guarantee that?
There's no way to guarantee them, aside from something that Grand Haven does that has cameras and pull systems, and I don't think we can sustain that type of program. But given as many emergencies we have around the piers, I'd like to have something there to possibly save lives. So I've ordered the ugliest rope and the ugliest life rings. Unfortunately, sometimes people want those for souvenirs, and that's why I think I've asked for enough funding for 16 so that we can replace them. And to be honest with you, in a couple of years, we might come back together and say, okay, we can't sustain this isn't working, those types of conversations, but I don't think we're here now. And again, if we can fund this with grant funds, I think it's important, especially for our water safety program.
Well, and have you heard with like the life jacket stations? I mean, when I drive by, they don't look like they're missing life jackets. Have we had any theft with
I
that?
haven't had any reported, I don't know if you have anything from the parks, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we've taken an inventory. I know that a lot of them get left all over the place and have to be put back up. But it looks like the bulk of them are still there.
Yeah.
And they get used quite a bit.
So fingers crossed, maybe we won't have that problem.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Want to stay there? Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Pratt.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. At this time, council could take action to authorize the submission of a grant application to the Local Revenue Sharing Board for the Police Department in the amount of $4,969.53 for a portable radar sign. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
Any discussion?
Is that the sign you got out, is that comparable to this?
no, so that's a great question. Same kind of system, that's a radar trailer. And when I bought that trailer, we were gracious enough to get funds for that. I bought a smaller trailer, if you remember. In a suburban area, it's hard to put a big cumbersome trailer out. Well, what we're finding is that if we can have this type of radar sign, it's only, I think, 18 by 24. It's detachable. You can put it in multiple locations, so you can put it in school zones and neighborhoods. It doesn't need to be in the right of way. It can be off on a pole. This particular one that I'm asking for stores data, has a tampering alert that alerts your phone if someone's tampering it. If someone tries to steal it, it takes a picture of them, sends it to your phone. So because these are grant funds, we kind of went with, we thought was the best package for anti-theft and then served our needs of our community. But the biggest thing for us is being able to have something that is rechargeable and that can download reports so we can see, okay, when John Smith calls from Smith Street and says there's speeders all day, we can deploy this for 3 days, find out what time of day they're speeding, and allocate our resources that time. In addition to that, it acts as a deterrent. So it's a small sign, tells your speed. If you speed, it has a strobe light that goes off that hopefully deters speeding. I think it's important to have both these tools, especially we have a detour now. It sounds like there's probably more detours in our future with our school zones. I think it's a good tool for us, and hopefully we can get funded by it. I think they have one up by Coatmish in Manistee County. I think I've seen one.
Anybody else? Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski. Councilmember Pratt.
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. At this time, council could take action to authorize the submission of a grant application to the local revenue sharing board for the fire department in the amount of $13,992.74 for digital fire extinguisher training system. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the fire extinguisher training system it basically consists of a fire extinguisher that's the same size, same weight as a standard fire extinguisher, and also a television screen that would be the digital fire that we do. And how it works is this fire extinguisher would shoot an infrared thing at the TV screen, at the television screen, and if you use the correct pattern, the fire will eventually go out. So what the fire department's found is we go to a lot of different public education events where we have a lot of different props for the children. We don't have much for the adults or to really capture that attention, so we figure we can double up on that. Is while we're teaching the kids, we can also teach the children. We also get called out to different community events for adults specifically to teach how to use the fire extinguisher. So during an emergency, it's a good idea to give them the muscle memory of how to react during a fire, and that's what we hope to accomplish with this tool.
Now, are the fire extinguishers that you use, are they the same weight as, say, the ones that are in sentry terrace where they're hung on the walls? Because
Yeah,
that has been somewhat of a discussion point.
Yep, it's the most common type of extinguisher that's required in most businesses and fairly common in residential homes. I think the other benefit is this is like a battery-powered thing that shoots something, so it's something that you can use repetitively over and over again without making a mess.
Do other departments come in cheap to train on something like that?
The fire extinguisher, yeah, really, it'd be open to anyone available to train.
Good.
Anybody else? Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. At this time, council will take action to authorize the submission of a grant application to the local revenue sharing board for the fire department in the amount of $31,312.80 for digital fire training system. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
What's the difference? Sounds similar.
It is similar, so education is the theme. This is something that we use specifically to educate firefighters and other fire departments. So it really uses a lot of the same technology to where you have multiple screens that you could set up that flash and glow like a fire would inside of a home. It also has a smoke machine hooked to it, so it provides smoke, sound. Fires make a lot of sound when they burn, and then the glowing embers. So the philosophy that we would use with this is we would take this unit out to the county training center, which is behind the Manistee Township Fire Department. We would set up these screens, fill those containers up with smoke, and we would practice initial fire attack evolutions. All right, and what this does is, just like with the public, it builds the muscle memory and all the different skills that we need to do to make an initial fire attack. Now, this was a more expensive type thing. So we have every intention of making this available to all of the fire departments around so we can build stronger teams together. I would like to invite other fire departments to come in and we can have group trainings and we can just really practice all working together.
Anybody else? Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt.
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Thank you. Consideration of applications to boards and commissions. The city clerk has taken action to advertise vacancies on the Board of Review, Compensation Commission, Harbor Commission, Tree Commission, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Mayoral and manager appointments require a motion second and council voted support. Nominations for council appointments do not require a second. After all nominations are made, council votes on the nominees until one nominee receives the majority support. The following applications have been received. Harbor Commission, one vacancy, term ending 10/31/26. Purpose, advisory on marina and harbor development issues, council appointment. Wayne Johnson, 341 6th Street. At this time, council could take action to make the appointment as noted. Or nomination.
I'll make a motion to nominate Wayne Johnson for the vacancy ending at 10/31/26.
Heather, would you please take roll?
Councilmember Beaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Lundberg.
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grabowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin Pontiac.
Yes.
Nomination approved.
Thank you. Now we will have a report from Mark Fetter for the Manistee County Historical Museum.
Very slow.
All right. Very happy to be here once again, speaking to you about the exciting world of local history and what we've been up to at the museum, as well as a couple mentions of the Historic District Commission. Katie's going to talk about that a little bit more in detail, but I'm going to highlight it a little bit. I'm going to divide this up into four different, very brief, four different sections here. What we've been up to at the Historic District Commission, what's been happening at the museum, the waterworks, and the future. That's going to be an exciting one there, the future one there. The Historic District Commission, what we typically do at the museum is we work with people, potential building owners, business owners, planning and zoning department, realtors, environmental specialists on various aspects of historic research on the buildings. Typically, you know, when the building was built, who built it, and who occupied it. People like to know those things. So for instance, if you're going to go down here and you want to purchase the Larson building here, this is the picture from 1990, you're going to want to know, who built it, when was it built, if we have any historic photos of it, so on and so forth. So what we'll do is we'll grab the maps out, and this is that building right on the corner there of Filer, and then down in Greenbush and on River. We're going to pull these maps out, and we're going to try and tell you what we can know about the building when it was originally built. And then we're going to dig up a bunch of newspaper articles for you regarding when that building was constructed and who built it and so on and so forth. Also, we'll find out through the various city directories everyone who occupied the building and what the businesses were that were located in there. And then if we want to go back even further to that piece of property, we're going to haul out the big abstract books and see what we can find for you, and do all that kind of stuff. So we do a lot of that with potential building owners and business owners down on River Street through the Historic District as well. Overall, from last September till this September, I've been involved with 21 certificates of appropriateness. These range from typically things that the Historic District Commission allows me to do, such as paint approval and signage, and a couple of other bigger projects that we were involved with this year. Most notably, the Outsider, which took a lot of time through the Historic District Commission, as well as working with the new owners. Worked for quite a while with the folks over at Snyder Shoes to ensure that they have a cool design and a compatible design with the Historic District Commission. And then also, of course, one of the other bigger projects was the back of the library, which received all new windows over the last couple months. And then this is not a picture of the property now, but I couldn't find a current picture of what it's going to look like. But this is where the Gateway project is being proposed, even though it's not within the district. I also met with officials from involved in that project to discuss its compatibility with the historic district as well. So very, very active year through the Historic District Commission. In terms of the museum, from September of last year to July of this year, we had 1,077 visitors. Usually it's a little higher, but this kind of falls in right in the middle. It wasn't as big as say 2021 when after the pandemic people kind of wanted to get out and about. That was a very busy year. This is kind of normal for the most part. Overall, we had 62 researchers, and these are people that typically come from all over the country, and some people from different countries. Believe it or not, they come to Manistee, Michigan, and do research on their families and their family trees and genealogy and what great uncle Bob, where he lived, and so on and so forth. Get to meet a lot of very interesting people and get to help out a lot of people by trying to kind of piece together the family tree. We have a very significant genealogy records down at the museum, as well as the original newspapers, and lots of other documents that we're able to haul out when people want to know their family tree. Always having a good time researching that with people, as well as which I've seen quite a bit of uptick over the last couple of years, especially this past year, in people moving to Manistee, buying a house, and wanting to know the history of that house. Most cases I'm able to give them at least an approximate date, and in some cases I'm able to pull out newspapers and say this is exactly when it was built and this is who built it, and so on and so forth, as well as attempt to provide them with some photographs and so on and so forth. So once again, you get to meet a lot of neat people, a lot of new people, and discuss the community a little bit, and always really fun to do. Also worked a little bit with the police department and gathering some information and some photographs for them over the last year in regards to the history of the police department. Worked on some verbiage for a grant that was proposed for the North River Walk, as well as met with the Department of Transportation and talking about the trolley tours and some of the historical aspects that they highlight on that. As well as various other departments too, but these were kind of the highlights. We had a holiday display this year, just kind of a generalized Christmas display with a couple trees and various histories of Manistee County in the wintertime. Currently, we have an exhibit that we started here back in July and will go through October about Manistee and 40 objects. 40 objects in the museum that are very unique, according to museum staff, and you can walk by, read a little bit about them, and scan the QR code, and that'll take you to the website where there's even more information. This one is on Chief John Willette's, Police Chief John Willette's uniform that we have on display at the museum that was donated by the family. You can scan that QR code and it'll take you to some more information about Mr. Willette, as well as his time with the police department. So this has been a popular exhibit this summer, especially with families, younger people who know how to use those darn phones and scan in the QR codes and scan them, and it's always a lot of fun to kind of relay that information to younger people. We gave several lectures over the course of the year. These were kind of the highlights. The bigger ones that I spent a lot of time, gave a talk to the Planning Commission last November, did a couple for the Lakeside Club over the last year. The Parks Commission gave a kind of a overview of city parks, as well as some of the city parks that are no longer here. That was kind of a longer one that we did here. I didn't see anybody fall asleep, so count that as a win for me. But it was a lot of fun. We had a good time that night and hope to do more of those in the future. Also gave a talk at the Wagner Center and had a lot of fun doing that as well. One thing that my predecessor, Steve Harold, of many things that he did over his 35 years with the museum, is he started writing weekly local history columns for the Manistee News Advocate. He started this in 1976. 47 years later, we're still doing it. That's a lot of Manistee history, and that's a tradition that we continue to do. Continue to have a good relationship with the newspaper, not just because I'm married to the editor, but also something that I want to get that in there, something that we continue to do over the years, and have a wonderful response throughout the community. And Steve always maintained that this was the best way to get people involved in local history. And I say that, I still continue to say that it is. So that's something we continue to do to this day. Also, through the newspaper, we do the daily looking back history column. Once again, another way to get the community invested in local history. This is something that I've been doing for the last 10 years, and that's 6 days a week in the paper, and always get a lot of people calling up or wanting to know more about some aspect of that. So, and a way to get people interested and continue to be interested in local history. One of the big projects that we were involved in, I mentioned this briefly last year that I was here, but it actually came to fruition back late September and into early October of last year, is the Origins Walk down by Douglas Park at First Street Beach. This is a picture of myself and Brandon Jensen kind of installing these sculptures and historical plaques. Was really something that came together really well, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. We played a pretty big role in assembling a lot of that historical information, not just for the plaques, but also for the, well, here's the dedication, and I'm sure some of you were there in a nice rainy October morning, but had a good time nonetheless. We also were pretty involved in getting all the kind of rallying all the historical information, photographs for the historic sites guide that we worked on with the visitor center, or the Tourism Authority, as well as the Little River Band, and was a wonderful collaboration with the folks at the Little River Band, with Jay Sam and Glenn Zaring, and as well as Sammy at the Tourism Authority. And then we also put together this kind of quicker 90-minute historic walking tours, kind of give you a little overview of kind of the greatest hits, as they say when you go to a concert, shut up and play the hits. This is basically what that book is. And so have had nothing but great response from people this summer coming into the museum and wanting a guidebook or a walking tour book or so on and so forth, and it helps provide them with an overview of the history community and the community of history, as well as the rich history that we have here. And moving on, the waterworks. We are officially vacated out of the building, which I know you've discussed in some kind of moving forward terms. Nothing official there yet, but we are vacated out of there. It was a massive undertaking since we announced it 2 years ago. These are a couple of our volunteers who are busily putting away items, storing items, and getting them kind of moved out of there. This was not a fun day, but we got this a huge tug engine out of there that is currently on display at the SS City of Milwaukee. And then we got some other, when I say some other things, once again, a massive undertaking, but these are some of the pictures that were taken from that. So what we basically did when we vacated the waterworks is that we inventoried the contents of the entire building. And then we went through as a committee to decide which item one by one we wanted to keep, what we knew was of historic value to the museum as well as Manistee. And then after that, we kept 2/3 of it. After that, we offered all the other area museums, Benzie, Brethren, the Old Kirk, so on and so forth, to come in and take a look at what was left and to see if they wanted anything. And a lot of that was weeded out of there. And then we had a small sale there back at the middle of May where we sold a couple items. And then from May to about early July, I kept getting calls at the museum about, hey, you have that there? Or, oh, I was interested in that. And the key was just to get as much as we could possibly get out of the building. There's probably about 5% there, maybe 10%. But we got the majority of it out of there. A lot of work, big undertaking, but we're glad that we were able to do that, and we're excited about what the next chapter of that building is. Moving forward, whatever happens to that building in regards to anything that can be or will be possibly proposed for it, I'm at your disposal. So if I can be of any help to you, please let me know. And I want to see, I think everyone, or most of everyone in the community wants to see that building stay there and be used for a different purpose. What that is, we'll see what the future brings. But if I can be of any help to you, please let me know. In terms of the future, we are aiming for the preservation of the museum building. This is not a picture of Manistee, Michigan. This is a picture from Back to the Future 2 when Marty McFly went to the future. I didn't know how else to show the future, so I said, let's go to Back to the Future 2. We had a pretty significant strategic planning sessions being held at the museum earlier this spring, and out of that is something that our board of directors, as well as myself, knows that after 140 years is how old the building is that we have the museum in. Needs a lot of work, and this is a building that we do own, and we are making steps to preserve that building for future uses because it needs to be done. We often think of the museum as thinking about old things in the past and how things used to be, but in order to keep those buildings preserved, a lot of work and a lot of planning needs to be done. And so we're just kind of we're kind of wiping the slate clean and starting from square one with that. So that's kind of where we're moving toward steps to do that here, and hope to have a plan in place by the beginning of next year. So with that said, are there any questions? I'll certainly take questions from you folks, if you have any for me.
I have a question.
Sure.
Later, but it seems like it might fit here.
Sure.
So in the past, like years ago, I think Steve, maybe Kendra Thompson, and somebody else, there was like a committee that recognized people that were like restoring properties or things like that. Is that something we still do?
That is not something we still do. That was done largely at first through the Uniqueness Committee.
Right.
And then I believe in 2007, I want to say, is when the Historic District Commission was kind of assembled and put in place. And I've been with the museum since 2009. In my time working with the museum as well as the Historic District Commission, we've never done anything like that. But I think it was brought up. Was it brought up at a previous meeting?
I feel like it was,
actually. And I think it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Because it's some incentive, and the amount of money and time that people put into preserving the buildings, they should be recognized somewhat. So.
And it may help with some of our blight.
Yeah.
Like honestly,
agreed.
so I thought, years ago that was something that
it was
homeowners
something
would get recognized for, and it was pretty inexpensive. I mean, the cost of a plaque or a paper certificate or something.
Yeah.
So it might go a long ways.
Agreed.
So I just didn't know if that was something we still did.
That's something that we don't do, but is moving forward. It's probably a good idea to look into doing.
Okay.
So absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we will have a report from Katie Mill on the Historic District Commission.
Good evening, everyone. So I'll take some time to go over what the Historic District Commission is and what they have been working on in the past year. So the Historic District Commission is just what it sounds. It's charged with overseeing the historic district. It's controlled by the Local Historic Districts Act, which outlines the statutory requirements for creating a historic district and establishing and maintaining the Historic District Commission. I feel like I get this question a lot. People always ask, well, what's even the point of being in the HDC or having historic buildings? People just think that it makes it more expensive to maintain your building, but there is opportunities through the state and the federal government to apply for tax credits. Per the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, designating an area as a local historic district is one of the few ways a community can provide legal protection for its historic resources. And then I did find a study funded by the Michigan State Housing Development Authority and the Michigan State Historic Preservation Office using assessor data from 4 communities at 3 points over time. And that revealed how local historic district designation affects property values in residential neighborhoods. And they did find that it enhances property values. So that's a little data to kind of back up that statement. Oops. Getting into the tax credits. So state tax credits are through SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. They're available to income producing properties and private residences. You either have to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the State Register of Historic Places, or be located in a local historic district to be eligible for the state credits, and those are awarded on a first come, first served basis. For commercial state credits, this is only available to income producing properties. And then I did find on the Michigan website that on August 4th, 2023, they updated that a limited amount of 2023 small commercial credits have not been allocated. So SHPO will be accepting new Part 1 applications in this category on September 5th, 2023, but only starting September 5th, 2023. So I just thought that that was good information. I personally don't have a lot of expertise or knowledge on what is involved with these grant applications or what a Part 1 application is, but I felt like this was a good place to announce that. If there's anyone looking for information on the commercial tax credits. And then there's the federal tax credits, which are through the National Park Service and the IRS, but they're still applied for through SHPO. And I also found on the SHPO website that they recently switched to all electronic applications. So that's something new. And I guess they're only accepting electronic applications. There's more information on that on myplace.org, miplace.org. And I'm not sure if I went over this, but the federal tax credits, okay, yeah, for the federal, it's only for a business or other income producing property as well, and a substantial amount must be spent on rehabilitating the historic building. So that's a little background on the tax credits available. Heather, can you maybe scroll that a little? Thank you. So this is an image of our historic district map. You can see it extends for the bulk of our downtown of River Street and then up Washington up to the old Northern Hotel, I think is what people refer to it as, and then down to the library. So you can kind of, see that when you picture in your mind the library is pretty historic, and even the Northern Hotel has some nice historic features. The contributing properties are identified as shaded black, and then we have non-contributing properties as well. They still have to go through the same approvals that contributing properties would go through with going to MARC or the Historic District Commission. But I guess they're, kind of reviewed in a different light because there aren't historical features of the building that necessarily need to be preserved, but we still want to keep them in line with the aesthetics and the historic nature of the district. So this district establishment was in 1982 and was revisited in 2007 and 2018 to determine if the boundaries should be adjusted or some properties removed or added, and it was determined at both of those times that it should remain as it was established. So here we have a list of the current members, and then I just pulled some language from the Local Historic Districts Act, which controls them, talks about membership, and that the members should demonstrate an interest or knowledge in historic preservation. So yeah, we have our 7 members on the right. A couple of them are fairly new, and Lee Trucks looks like, our longest member, and he is also the chair. A couple things that the HGC worked on this year. You guys would have seen the approvals for the bylaw amendments that we sent through for a couple boards and commissions. So this was also involving the Historic District Commission, just the meetings and trainings, and then they were having conflicts of interest on their agenda. So I just added that to the bylaws to stay consistent with that. Another thing that we had worked on was amendment to the guidelines. I started to receive a couple complaints on potential violations in the historic district, and it brought to our attention that there really wasn't any regulation for temporary window postings, and that was a lot of where the violations were coming from. So short of going downtown and telling everyone to remove their temporary flyers, before we began that enforcement, we decided to revisit the guidelines and see if there was any amendment that could be made. So we did create regulation for temporary window signs and kind of put some timeframes on that and such. And then another layer to that that I didn't mention in the slide was that we also amended the zoning ordinance. The HGC recommended approval, or recommended to the Planning Commission to approve, or I guess, again, recommend approval to you guys, referencing the HGC guidelines right in the zoning ordinance. So the language itself isn't in the zoning ordinance, but the document is referenced so that, you know, property owners are aware that, okay, outside of zoning, there's also these guidelines that I might have to adhere to if I'm in the historic district. And then, so this is just a little table kind of showing the permits issued in 2022 compared to the permits issued so far in 2023. I thought that was pretty significant increase when you think about HGC permits just being, you know, for facade and signs and such. A lot of these permits are signs, but that's also indicator of like new businesses downtown. So that's promising, and hopefully the trend continues. So I'll just jump into a couple of the permits issued. This won't be everything, but just some of the highlights from some of the businesses that kind of had their work complete under permits issued in the past year. 339 River Street, the hobby store, and I think I had this one in my last presentation for you guys, but I think it's really cool that that picture of that it used to be a hobby store back in the day. But that building looks awesome with their signage. 369 River Street, they had new windows installed, so that is looking sharp. I know they did the paint job last year, and they've got some more work coming down the pipeline. 435 River Street, this work has not been complete, but this was kind of an ongoing enforcement that the HGC was working through, and the gentleman did apply for a new signage location as well as new windows and some facade improvements. So that's the plan submitted for that. 457 River Street, we have the Outsider, and again, just a cool historic photo that was found when they were doing some investigating with Mark that I thought would be cool to show. And then this is one that actually came before you guys as well for an encroachment license to extend that catwalk around I think it's 308 River Street. So those are the plans and kind of where that is proposed to go on that building. And Mark had talked about this one, 308 River Street, Snyder Shoes did a complete facade revamp. I think that one looks really nice. Let's see if I have any more on here. Oops, I got a couple more. 353 River Street, they're still in progress and under permit, but they applied to repaint the building and then repaint the signs on the new TU antique shop as well. And we had Alpine Chocolate House come into town, so this was their site plan for the approvals for their signage and awning. Nope, I still got more coming. Okay. Third Coast Boutique moved onto River Street. So this is just showing some of their window signs that were approved. 318 River Street replaced a back window with a garage door because even though, you know, they're not, that portion of the building isn't fronting on River Street, the HGC does have the authority to control the entirety of the building. So even on the back side, on the Riverwalk side, is something that goes to the HGC for approval. And that was it. Did you guys have any questions?
Do business owners get a copy of what's allowed, like when they?
I know that that I believe the DDA or someone downtown has like a pamphlet, or did we have it on the website? Not directly from me, I will say. I know that I've heard that there are like avenues of getting access to that information. Because yeah, I think the city, there's like a new business owner pamphlet, but it's not necessarily directly distributed to them, at least for myself.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's all I had. Anybody else? Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll have a presentation, Housing North, Tracy Davis and Yarrow Brown.
PowerPoint. Hi, thanks for having us. I'll just get started while we're waiting for the PowerPoint and introduce myself as Yarrow Brown. I'm the Executive Director of Housing North, so we're a 10-county regional organization. Then we have Tracy, who is our boots on the ground here in Manistee County. So just an overview of what we do, which is to build awareness, advocacy, and capacity and resources all around housing in our 10-county region. We don't actually build the houses or put people in houses, but we're here to help coordinate, collaborate, and connect people to those resources, and hopefully ultimately see more housing and remove any barriers to that housing. Next slide, please. Or do we have a clicker? Oh, yeah. So I'm gonna just give a broad overview and then turn it over to Tracy, but this PowerPoint we wanted to share with you, so all of these are links to the different resources and programs on our website, so you can go back and reference them. And right now, we're here to talk to you about our housing needs assessment, which took about 9 months. So we got it for all 10 counties, and today we're gonna talk specifically about the report for the city of Manistee, but also highlight how that relates to the broader county level. You probably have seen our target market analysis, which I just wanna say, we're not comparing. We're trying really hard. It is a very different study, the housing needs assessment versus the target market analysis that we got in 2019. However, there are some similarities, but this assessment really does capture where we are right now, and the data was collected in 2022 into 2023, and then projecting out until 2027. And you can see on the screen that it is pretty comprehensive. I didn't bring my report, but the actual 10-county report is about 600 pages, and there is a lot of demographics, economics, and then he does a gap estimate, which is really what we'll focus on, or we do focus on. And then one of the things in the report to just, if you go to the county report too, is to look at the SWOT analysis, where he looks at the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats for both the county and the city. So I won't say much more except to hand it over to Tracy, and I'll be here as backup. I will also tell you this is our very first Housing Needs Assessment Roadshow. So if we can't answer your questions, no, we're still learning. And Patrick Bowen, who is the consultant, is also available to answer any questions. Thanks.
So hi, before I get started, I just wanted to note that the full city assessment was in your packet. So you have that, as well as there is a sheet that summarizes the county data. So that is available for you to review also. And then at the end, as a part of this presentation, there is also the link to our site that has that 600-page full 10-county report, as well as additional data and statistics. So what I really did here was try to pull out some statistics and highlights from the city report. And I really want to start with some demographic information. So you can see the population growth for the region will be very slight and in some cases experience declines. Manistee County is forecast to have a 0.2% decline, while the city is expected to have a 1.2% decline by 2027. Wow. So if you look at the further breakdown, this is in terms of households, which is a little bit different than population. So if we're looking at households, you'll see a growth among older millennials aged 35 to 44 and seniors 65 and above. And this trend is consistent in the county. But in Manistee, in the city, you'll see that there's a 4.5% increase in millennials and a 19% increase in age 65 and above. And oddly, a 2.7, which I thought was odd, a 2.7% increase in households 25 and below. So the median household income in the city is $54,157. That is about 9% lower than the county's AMI, and we will be experiencing an increase. So by 2027, we'll have an AMI in the city of 61,832. I did want to point out some Alice and poverty information. So the city has a 13% poverty rate and a 43% Alice plus poverty. And for people that aren't familiar with Alice, it's the asset limited, income constrained, and employed individuals. So this is a pretty significant slide. So there's a lot of information. And to summarize in this section, I wanted to share that the city has 43.1% of the rental units and just over 70% of owner-occupied homes that were built prior to 1970. So the county takes the prize as having the oldest housing stock in our region, with the average age of a home being built in 1963. So the city's a little bit better in that, but you'll also see that 43.1% of rentals, I said that the 43 of the rentals and 70% of homes were built before 1970. The city rentals are slightly older than the region, but the owner-occupied housing is significantly higher than the region. And this report also showed that 6.6% of the homes, both rentals and homes, have incomplete plumbing, unfinished kitchens, and unsafe living conditions. And the majority of which, 6.5, are rental units.
I have a question.
Sure.
didn't interrupt. The 6.5, is that out of that 6.5? Or is that 6.5 out of the 43?
No, it's the 6.5 out of the 6.6.
Wow.
So most of them are rental units.
Thank you.
I did want to just throw in this seasonal or recreational housing information. This is county information, so 30% of our housing units are seasonal recreation in the county. I don't have specific data for the city, but I did provide Bill with a memo that provided a lot of resources for seasonal and recreational housing, including our study for seasonal housing. It had a company that could count the city's recreational and seasonal housing, so that is available. And a lot of other townships and cities in this area use this company. I think it's Granicus is the company. So sort of the meat of what everybody is interested in is the housing gap for the city. There's a total of 603 new units needed for the city. I've broken it down by rentals and home ownership. 273 rentals are needed and 325 new homes are needed. So of that, it could be obviously newly constructed apartments or homes, but it also could be conversions of existing homes and repair brought up to code and safe living conditions. So that could be opportunities for us. And I did want to point out, because I'll talk about it a little bit later, the section below that talks about AMI. So workforce housing or attainable housing is that 80 to 120%. And in our area, as I mentioned, 54,157 is our current AMI. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but I just wanted you to see that, and that that section of housing, people don't receive subsidies. It's not government funded or anything like that. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. This gap analysis also does include and consider any new permits that were provided or applications for maybe LIHTC or anything else like that. So that is in consideration and accounted for in those numbers. So this kind of breaks down even further that gap for you to kind of see. The largest gap, obviously, for rentals is for individuals making under $37,850. And in terms of home ownership, what you'll see, that's where the bulk of our gap lies, and that's consistent across the region. So, you know, everyone's dream is home ownership. So, as I talked about, our largest gap falls from that 80 to 120 AMI. So that was from that slide earlier, and 80% AMI to 120 is $60,561 to $90,840. So that would be that 120, the 90,000. So the price points that those fall into are $201,000 to $302,800. And this is just a snapshot of housing sales that occurred for a 6-month time period. And they're assuming from the sampling that this is across the board, pretty much what occurs in this snapshot. And what you'll see is that there are limited houses for sale at the variety of price points. And then also throughout the report, you'll see that there's a slight majority of the homes for sale, 55.5%, are above the 300,000 range. And if you go back and look at some of those statistics about the AMI that we talked about and where that gap lies, you'll see that those don't necessarily line up. So it becomes unaffordable for individuals to purchase a house. And again, we will talk a little bit about recommendations. I'm not going to read them all because you've got them in front of you. But what I did want to talk about is pulling out a couple things. Supporting and encouraging the preservation of older housing stock is one of those recommendations. And you heard me talk a little bit about the neighborhood enterprise zone, which that would assist with our preserving and updating our housing stock. So I will be coming again, either at the next meeting or next month, to talk more officially about that information. And we're also exploring some grants for housing preservation, not just in the NEZ, but in areas throughout our city. Another one I wanted to talk a little bit further about was emphasizing the possibility of looking at target segmented markets for senior housing in particular, because you saw that that's the largest growing area in the city. And also that older millennial age would be maybe a target that we would look at. And then the other thing is looking at development sites. So there were some recommendations in our county specifically that had sites available from the consultant, which I have asked for, so that I can start to begin to put together a plan which might be sites for residential housing for the city. So I'm actually, Mark and I from the Chamber have actually talked about sitting through and plotting what those might look like. So the other things I just wanted to end before I open for questions is the Housing North is also doing the regional housing partnership for the regional statewide housing plan. And it will be available for public comment on, or public review.
It is right now.
It's right now?
Till the 15th.
Okay, till the 15th. So I do have a link that I can share as well so that you have an opportunity to make public comment. And then finally, we have an annual housing summit, which is October 25th through the 27th. And there's a link to that summit, and registration is open now for that. So thank you. Are there questions for Yarrow and I that we could?
I have a question on the homes that are needed. Does that include like seniors aging out of their homes? Because I feel like that's a huge, like we really need some type of senior living.
It does, which that's why, that's one of the larger populations that are gonna continue to grow. I had it up, I believe, when we talked about household breakdowns, so you're gonna see that increase even, so that's more of a crisis in that particular area that we need to focus on, which is what part of the recommendations that we look to target and segment, and I would really do that based on some of the recommendations from this.
Yeah, and I think in the bigger report, there's also in the gap estimate, there's like a step down approach that he talks about. And so we're kind of in that situation where seniors are not stepping down because there isn't stock. And then some people are stepping up into homes that maybe they don't really need because that's all that's available. So if you dive into that, there is some information about what different income levels and then household sizes are moving within that space.
Okay.
Other questions?
I guess I'm still like a little shocked by that percentage of like unsafe living conditions that are operating as rentals. So is that something that will be addressed like with the change with the rental inspections and that, I guess? Because I took it like they're operating as rentals currently.
Yes.
But they're viewed as unsafe, not like they were rentals, but we've lost them because.
No, you're right, that
Okay.
they're operating as rentals. So some of, and Bill, I'll then let you jump in. So one of the things on the Housing Action Team's list is looking at rentals and talking about what we can do to impact that. So part of those, the NEZ housing, the rentals would be eligible for certificates, and some of the grants that we're looking at would be eligible for certificates or grants to assist with making those livable conditions. So I don't know, Bill.
Yep, and Tracy's point out, we've been talking about a rehab program of some sort in this housing development fund that MISHDA's putting through, we're hoping to apply for, and a certain percentage, I think it was up to 50% can be exterior repairs, up to 25% can be interior repairs. So identifying those houses, bringing them up to code, I think it's something that's, our housing stock is old, we need to improve it, and I think we need to have a program for it. So yes, I think augmenting our department of, having a building official and whoever else we applied for a grant to have a neighborhood services coordinator who could implement the neighborhood enterprise zone, because that's going to be some paperwork. So we're trying to get all the pieces together to make sure we have a robust program.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I just had another question, but if
No,
you
go
have
ahead.
something to, okay. You had mentioned that you had sent Bill information in regards to that service.
Oh,
I know
that's-
other people have used that for like the summer or vacation or recreational. I guess personally, I still see that as a need because we have some people that are designating their homes as vacation rentals or short-term rentals or whatever, but then we still have a certain population that's not, and they're still getting 100% homestead. So it's not really, you only can report the data you can collect, right? So it's as accurate as what you know, but it's still not 100% accurate. And I have to wonder if some of those people that are getting homesteaded tax rates, if once they started paying non-homestead, if that might change or have an impact one way or another in the housing market, because when your taxes go up, you might choose not to continue to pay that tax rate and put it back on the market.
Well, and the other thing you're seeing and hearing is there's some saturation with seasonal rentals. So, but it was a whole page with a whole bunch of links and a whole bunch of studies and samples of resolutions and policies from Frankfurt and other areas that Bill has.
I'd like to thank Tracy for providing that. I asked her for this to provide to the ordinance committee. So I know when Councilman Bachman gets back, we'll be meeting to go over it. So.
I just have a question. How does rehabbing the rentals look with landlords? Like, because a lot of them can afford to fix them up, they just choose not to because they've been allowed to get away with it. So you're just gonna give them money to?
No, so there are requirements around what that looks like in terms of income, depending on what grant or program you're using. So we wouldn't just be giving it to people that had the resources to be able to do that.
Okay.
I think, part of the new inspection services, looking at what it is and how to maintain that is something, I think that Bill is probably looking at, and I don't know if.
Well, I was just gonna add that some communities, develop like a grant program or an incentive program, so then they apply, and as long as it's a year-round home and not a short-term rental or seasonal rental, then they can have access to those funds. So it would be on the property owner, though, likely to apply. And there are going to be CDBG grants, I'm sure you've heard that, Community Development Block Grant, so those are now gonna be going to MSHA. So there should be some more rehab dollars, and if you go to the statewide housing plan and you don't see something in there, but one of the things we're trying to put in is ways we can advocate for set-aside funding or make sure funding does come to Northwest Michigan that our nonprofit developers or communities know they can always access. So I think that's the next, is to advocate for funding that comes here to then meet the goals of your housing. And I would say in our region, having rehabilitation and restoration funds is one of the biggest gaps.
I think one of the other things when you're looking at registering for rentals, there can be incentives like instead of having a multi-year, if you pass, you get a multi-year. If otherwise, you're gonna have to have an annual recertification or something like that. So those things will be helped and put in place.
Okay, so I see both sides of it. Like I see sometimes it's not the landlord, it's the actual renters that are destroying the house, and then the landlords can't get them evicted. But then I also see that there's landlords that own multiple houses and don't put money into them. And then when they put money into them, it gets reassessed, so then the rent goes up so the people can't afford it anyway. So I'm just confused on how that's gonna work. Like,
Some of the tools will have some income, restrictions. So as long as they're for a family that's up to 120%, of the AMI, that would be a point. But yeah, that will happen. But I think the idea is to basically do as much as we can to help rehab the existing homes and make sure they're safe and healthy, and then encourage people to apply for those programs. It's not going to be perfect, but right now, at least what we're learning from the study is that we have a lot more, homes that need rehab, and hopefully we can get programs to help. But it's not going to be a perfect solution. It's just going to help with those who want to, participate, and we can provide some incentives to encourage that.
okay.
And there are some programs that, for if a landlord, for example, accepts individuals with vouchers, if the unit is wrecked, for example, that they can be reimbursed through the voucher system to bring it back up to where it needs to be. So there are some added value of providing, through a voucher system, and landlords accepting that.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where are we? Citizens comment. This is an opportunity for citizens in attendance to comment on municipal services, activities, and areas of the city involvement. Limited to 5 minutes. Letters submitted to council will not be publicly read. See nobody. Mr. Gamble.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. So our new building official, Jerry Blau, will be starting on September 18th, so we're excited to have him on board. Also, the steps are being worked on, weather dependent. We're hoping those are done by the end of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other staff? Mr. Pratt.
I had a couple things. So I had brought it up previously, and then I went to a DDA meeting and brought it up. I'd kind of like it to maybe be put on a work session, to at least talk about the sidewalks downtown. So the last thing we have, like the commercial use permit, was updated in 2017, so it's been a while. But if you walk down there right now, and I would encourage some other council members maybe to drive down there, there are certain establishments that have the outdoor seating in the street, and then they've added seating on the sidewalk. There is not enough room to get a stroller through. If you have a double stroller, good luck, you're gonna have to go out in the street. You cannot get a wheelchair down there. I don't know how else to say it, but there are regulations with that, and ADA would not approve that. I drove down there tonight because I thought, well, maybe it just took some time trying to give that. But you have in front of one establishment the one-way sign. I mean, you're gonna hit the sign with your wheelchair or your assistive device. In front of another establishment, you have planters and you have a light pole. And then in front of the other one, you've got another sign. So I understand according to this, it says 5 feet. That's a minimum. That's not a maximum of 5 feet, but how big is a wheelchair width? I mean, everyone comes in different sizes. 5 feet, I can tell you, is not enough when you're talking a school hallway for that type of thing. Fire marshal isn't gonna say just leave 5 feet to make it through. So I feel like that needs to come back to council. We need to look at that, because when that was implemented, we didn't have the street patio things that people could apply for. And one of those businesses has both. So I feel like that's not appropriate when you can't, when you're denying access, so to speak, to people on one side of the street. The other side of the street doesn't have that issue.
We do have a policy regarding that. I think 5 feet is the ADA requirement. Is that right, Lucas, or?
You can check on, I'm pretty sure it is 42 inches would be.
I think the DDA created that.
Yeah, I don't think that
So
this
when
was
we're-
probably approved by ADA, and ADA updates their policies often, and this was last updated in 2017.
And we
But
did have
I
the
can-
police take a look at, and I do realize, yeah, it seems like there's light posts, there's the outdoor dining, there's the planters that we had, people wanted to put out there, so there's a lot going on in the sidewalks, I agree.
Yeah, and if the minimum is 5 feet, then we should probably make it a little bit larger, so we're ensuring that we're meeting that 5 feet, because people encroach on that. Not purposefully, but everybody kind of eyeballs what is 5 feet. I don't think people are out there with a ruler.
I did.
And Councilman, you found they were 5 feet, is that?
Yep, most places were 5 feet, but like you say, you got the light bulbs.
Well, and I think
You got
you're,
the flower planters.
you're measuring to the curb too, I think,
Yeah.
with this way it's written,
Well,
but.
I was just going up to the planters and that.
Right, but with the way this is written, it's like to the curb, but how many people are gonna go right to the curb?
I didn't know if that was a minimum, like you're saying, a minimum.
Yeah, so that's what it says. So I think we need to relook at that. The other thing, I was just trying to think ahead, communication, it was clear at the last meeting, communication was an issue, and I'm just wondering, is there a way moving forward that we can do some type of volunteer, whether it be a community member, but I also think we should recognize employees like on a monthly or sometime like a regular basis for things that they do really well. Could we put some positive PR out there on like the website or something? If somebody in a department does something really well, you guys might do that at a staff meeting. I'm not saying that people aren't getting recognized, but I don't think at a community level, we're all, like, it's really easy to hear the negative things, but I don't think we spend enough time with the positive. So it might be something that we could do, and again, that costs nothing.
Well, when Mr. Szymanski was here, we would recognize their birthdays, their length of service. We would give them cards and all that from the council.
Okay, so that was one thing. I mentioned earlier the thought I had about blight. I mean, I don't think that that's an easy solution, but sometimes if we can offer a positive incentive, and sometimes it's just recognition to somebody who like fixed up their house, and it doesn't mean you have to put $50,000 into it, but somebody might buy a house and the yard looks like crap, and then they just go in and clean it up. I mean, it's really easy to print off a paper certificate and send it to them. And then the last thing I had, because somebody had called and asked me about it, and I went and checked, what is our policy regarding dogs downtown and on the Riverwalk? Like, I know on the Riverwalk, there's certain areas where there's signs that say no dogs allowed, and then there's areas where it says dogs allowed. But I guess the question, and I've ran into it myself a couple of times, you know, I guess I'm probably not so worried about the person walking the mini chihuahua that they can just like easily move, but there are some people that sometimes are walking some pretty big dogs that might
So I
be
think the
aggressive.
downtown Riverwalk portion that allows dogs, correct, Jeff? And then
Yeah.
the other portion does not?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't recall about downtown. I think council changed it on the Riverwalk to allow it within the DDA district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was wide enough for multiple people to pass. And then if my memory serves me correctly, but it was restricted west of Spruce Street because then you've got a much narrower walk. And I don't know about downtown.
Well, this is gonna kind of start a different conversation, but, there's a policy, we have policies.
Yeah.
Which councilman is it? So we have policies that prohibit behaviors, and my stance is a policy applies to employees and not the public. So the ordinance committee might want to look at some of our policies and see if you want to make those like a codified ordinance. So I know there is a policy, a city policy that prohibits skateboarding downtown. But when you have a policy, it implies to employees, where ordinance implies to the general public. So again, I hate to pull the thread even further, but it sounds like our ordinance committee is very active. That might be something that's part of the same conversation, looking at downtown ordinances and seeing, do they meet what's currently happening? Does council have an interest to tweak some of these things, or at least do they have an appetite to match what is currently being allowed? So I think that's all part of the same conversation. So I can forward over the policies about downtown skateboarders. I think dogs and bicycles are part of that policy. I'll double check that, but we might want to look to change that from a GP, a city policy, to a ordinance if council has an appetite. And let me send that to the ordinance committee.
I think that is already in the ordinance.
Is it an ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw it was clearly posted on the Riverwalk,
Yeah.
but I didn't see it like where it was clearly posted downtown. So like I didn't want to misspeak, but
And the challenge is when you have a ton of tourists in town, they don't, if it's not signed, they don't know, right? In reality, they assume we can take it anywhere, we can take it to restaurants, we can go. So that's why I think signage is so important. Now, my position is, signing doesn't always deter crime, but it's the expectations, you have to notify them, and knowing that between May and September, our population goes up, people who don't live here. And we really enjoy that, so I think it's important to sign, so.
well, and it's one thing when you're walking maybe your dog down in the fall when the sidewalk's pretty open,
Right.
but in the summer, and you get really close to a dog, that might just be enough to
Sure.
set that dog off. So it was just a wondering. So thank you. That was all I had.
Mr. Growski? Really?
Yep.
Sorry.
I was just wondering, what has been done about the ad hoc committee for short-term rentals?
So we're going through the ordinance committee that we already have through council instead of an ad hoc committee.
There's no update though of where?
So I talked to the ordinance committee about the idea of an ad hoc committee, and the idea was, well, we already have an ordinance committee, so we'll go through that.
Okay, because I know it's been a while since it's been brought up. We're doing that, so. Update.
So, yeah, I've had the ordinance committee meet, we've gone through a couple changes, we've had a few things added. City attorney has added or provided some new language, we're waiting to meet again with the ordinance committee to go over those and also the short-term rental item.
Okay. And then just wanted to see about the bridge update. It's gonna be closed longer now, what I read. Okay.
So I attended the biweekly progress meeting last Tuesday. As they've deconstructed portions of this bridge, they have found steel components that have a lot of what's called section loss. So when rust starts to reduce the dimensional and structural dimension of the steel, then they get concerned. They've sent that off to their consulting engineers who are analyzing it, making recommendations. What they have forecasted is, and this is it's a very technical process, but the engineers need to determine what needs to be fixed, then submit that as a design change. The contractor needs to take that to their supplier. The supplier then needs to price that out with the contractor. State needs to approve that. The components need to be built, manufactured, delivered, installed. The bridge is ready to have its deck pours put on right now, but all this steel rehab has to be done before that. So they were expecting that the delay in the steel would take about 4 weeks. They're hoping that it's only 4 weeks, and then 2 more weeks to be able to pour the deck pours. So they're projecting out, best case scenario, end of October, beginning of November.
My concern is, though, I know that we had talked about doing the construction for Maple One first.
Correct.
And
We had a meeting with our contractor and the engineers today, actually, and laid out all of that information with our contractor. They are comfortable proceeding in November with that work, and we will need to probably do a little bit of cold weather protection on the concrete, and may need to, we may not be able to fully stripe that intersection with the crosswalks over winter time, but we certainly can. You guys, if you remember, we got snow early in November, then we had a beautiful 2-3 weeks of warm weather after that. So we're still hoping to get that done in November before Sleigh Bell Parade.
But we won't, as long as, we won't have the bridge closed and doing that at the same time.
We cannot do it at the same time, correct? Well, and it's more just the congestion at the intersection, right? I mean, we're always gonna have signals operating there, but you don't want people working in all 4 quadrants of that when you've got a congested intersection. So we've asked them, we timed that project to right after the detour be lifted,
Right.
and now we've had to delay that 6 weeks, so.
So what if it snows? Like snows the first couple weeks in November, then how far does that push the bridge out? Does that-
I'm not sure that that impacts the
Okay.
bridge construction. I don't think it would.
Okay,
Because if they have to, they can tent the pours, the deck pours. They can do heating, they can do blanket treatments on top. So I think there's techniques that would prevent that from delaying it. But fingers crossed that this proceeds methodically and doesn't impact us any further.
okay.
Did they ever get that sewer unplugged on 4th and Cypress?
I knew you had something.
Sewer unplugged at 4th and
I
Cypress.
told you that weeds were growing over it, and Lucas chopped that out, but then we found the sewer was full of sand, you couldn't get water down.
Well, that's the state of Michigan's. I wasn't aware of it, but I can let the maintenance engineer know that.
Yeah, so it's pretty solid.
Yeah, they contract on an annual basis to have all those catch basins cleaned the same way that we do ours.
Well, I thought we did the upkeep, and then they pay us or something.
Not necessarily on that.
Okay.
Yeah. They've often come to us and said, hey, we'd be willing to, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically an extension of our maintenance contract if we have time and we're willing to do it. I think we've done it a couple times where we felt we had capacity, but we haven't done that this year at all.
Okay. Are we gonna cold patch up on 8th and Tamarack?
Got a lot of cold patching to do. Yep, got a lot of cold patching to do.
People have asked me about that.
Yeah, and I mean, we're prioritizing work as each day, literally each day. We got a new employee hired today. I got another accepted position full-time today. And we interviewed a very promising candidate that I intend to make an offer this week. So that would, if all 3 of those people accept, pass all their pre-employment physicals and stuff, we'll hopefully be back to full strength in 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, next year, I'd like to ask you to send the council a list of what those kids in summer have to do. So we don't have the problems we had this summer.
Sure.
That'd be nice.
Anybody else follow them up here?
Anything else? Good? Okay. Ms. B.
Are we getting any response from the public on what they might like to see happen with the waterworks building?
I did get some feedback from some council members and some just random anecdotal items from people that I talked to. We could talk about that at a future session again, or?
Yeah, I've gotten several people who have approached me who said they want some kind of a museum there for children. That's an interactive type of activity where you're solving puzzles or doing something mathematical or scientific for the older kids and something for the younger kids too. Now, I know that's probably not, you know, that's not going to really generate us a lot of revenue in any way, but I think that, and again, along those lines, from what I'm getting, and everybody gets, you know, they talk to their neighbors or whatever, and they get a different perspective, but not having something, I think that the real loss that this community is feeling is the House of Flavors. Was, you know, a friendly atmosphere, you could take your children. They didn't really have a play yard, but I honestly really thought that the outsider demonstrated that well, and I just hate for them to lose that. People seem to really like that environment. They like the video machines. The kids like the video machines, the arcade kind of atmosphere in the back of the building, which is actually facing the front. But they like all of that. So I think it's, I wish we could give an incentive to somebody who was opening up a restaurant that was family-oriented. It didn't have to have alcohol to support it. I wish we could. I think it's there, and I think that's what we also need, something for kids to do here rather than, of course, stealing bicycles and other things. So.
Well, Linda, I think you should know Mr. Setbath has checked with Sandcastle, Wellington, in different places, so he's already checked into it.
Well, I understand that, but I'm also getting feedback from other people.
Yep.
And it's just, and it's beautiful building, the exterior. The issue is there's no heating and cooling in there. There's obviously no kitchen. There's no hood fans. There's just, so to do something what you're talking about would require a significant investment.
I realize that.
If the city, and maybe that's if you sell it to someone who's able to build it out, or if we try to build it out a little bit. It's just that is time consuming and costly if we try to take that on ourselves.
But there does seem to be there is an undercurrent of people who are always saying there's nothing for the kids to do here. So I think we need to really be thoughtful about that.
Anything else?
That's it.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the Gus Macker discussion we had. I know I was going to talk about maybe getting an ad hoc committee or something like that. I just didn't know where that was at the moment.
I've had some discussions with the Visitors Bureau, and yeah, between the time I left on paternity leave, I did see, you know, I think I need to talk to the chamber over at Ludington about their experience. I did talk to the city manager of Ludington. He claimed it was $110,000 that they had to put into it annually. So there are a couple of more conversations to have, but it is looking like a big undertaking if it's just going to be the city.
Deadline for that September 8th or October 8th?
It was, I believe he was saying October.
I don't remember.
I think it was.
Okay.
We're going to do some due diligence on whether we're doing it or not. We probably ought to be doing that now, right? Is that something you're looking into or talking to, or is?
So I don't know that the city has the staff to take that on by ourselves, unless the Visitor Bureau or Little River Casino was interested in hosting it. I just, right now, I'm leaning towards I don't think we can take that on. So just cards on the table about it.
Okay. All right, that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
For a moment, I thought nobody was going to make it.
I know.